This is rural East Westphalia, Germany. Creeks and meadows, forests, framework houses in its little villages and towns. Life is peaceful here and has been for many decades. But its peaceful appearance, like that of many German rural communities, is deceiving, because according to police statistics and the German magazine Der Spiegel, a wave of burglaries committed by national and international bands of criminals is sweeping the nation. I was already alerted when I had heard about a whole series of house breakings in the neighboring villages over the course of the last weeks. But I really had a wake-up call when my next-door neighbor was mugged in front of his house in broad daylight just last week. Now, even though I'm planning to leave this place in the near future and look for another location to build a better workshop, I want to take care of the most basic and obvious security issues of this house as long as I still live here. As many of you will know by now, I'm renting this old house because it allows me to have the space to work on my projects for a comparatively low price. And over the course of the last 3 years, in which I have been living here, I have bought a lot of tools and expensive equipment, and if those things were to be stolen, I would be practically ruined. And since I can't count on the landlords to do anything about the security situation, I will have to take things into my own hand once more. Besides many other things that are very insecure here, like the old windows and the balcony doors, there are some other things that would make it extremely easy for a burglar to get into the house. And I'll take care of those most urgent matters now and for as little money as possible. So let's make a quick assessment here and let's then go over to my improvised solutions for these problems. So we're down in the basement inside the boiler room, and here you can see the heart of a 30-year-old central heating system that is fired by heating oil. And here we have several layers of styrofoam that I actually inserted in here when I moved in. So let's take that out of there and see what's behind it. So as you can see, this is an old window. You can just stick your hand through this, and there is no lock or lever here anymore by which you could close this window. So you could come into the house without even breaking anything. The only thing blocking the way is a galvanized steel grate, but that can simply be lifted up and bang, you're inside the house. And there is one window in the basement that is in even much poorer shape than what we just saw. You'll see that later in the video. And the window that we have here is a type of window of which I have several in the basement. They are still okay, they're not rusted or anything because they're galvanized, but they are very flimsy in general. And I'm quite sure that a basement window like this one can be smashed in or kicked in by a reasonably strong guy, maybe with the help of a heavy object, in just a minute or so. So I will look for a way to make these windows more durable against attacks. And the idea here is not to make it impenetrable, that's not possible. But you just want the burglar to need a couple of more minutes to smash it in. Because statistics show that most of the guys will leave after 2 to 5 minutes if they haven't been successful yet. And here we have an old balcony with very insecure doors and windows, but I really can't do anything about that, it's too expensive. But I will just add a large light with a motion detector to it. And we will do the same here in the backyard. And I actually didn't want to make this a story about chaos and decay, but every time I'm telling a story about this house, it just ends up there. So here we have some footage of 2013 when I moved into the house of the backyard, and you can see that there are these ugly plastic panels here that the house is covered in. Now this was, I guess, fancy back in the 60s or 70s and everybody had it. This one still does. And well, the panels that you see here on the floor that are grown over by all kinds of stuff, well, they, as the neighbors told me, fell off back in the 70s when there was a particularly strong storm around here. And well, they have been lying here for all these decades. And they kind of blocked the way to the windows in the basement, meaning that, well, water could still flow down there when it was raining, but it had a hard time evaporating, and that's, I guess, the reason why the windows down there are so incredibly rusty, and you will see that in just a second. And here you can see how the backyard looked just about a week ago, still chaotic, but much better than back in 2013, right? And that's because I already put a ton of work into this whole thing here. But before I can go down and secure the window situation, I first had to cut off all this weed here, remove all the stones and the other clutter that is lying around, and now we can finally even access the steel grates that are blocking the way to the windows. And this is not the boiler room window, but the other window that I was talking about, the one in the very poor shape. And this leads to the oil tank room, through which the house can be accessed just as well as through the boiler room. And as you can see, the glass is broken and the frame of the window is rusted in such a way that it's practically non-existent anymore in many spaces. And I'm pretty sure this happened because rainwater was draining down here all the time, while it couldn't evaporate properly because of all the stuff that was lying on top of the grate. So I will definitely not replace these windows, since this is not my house, but if the landlords are in the right mind, they will decide to do something about this. Now, while I'm on it, I will protect my property, however, and I will do that by fastening the grates to the ground and do it in such a way that they can be lifted from the inside, but not as easily from the outside. So I guess you get the idea. A steel hook is anchored into the concrete, holding a turnbuckle, in German Spannschloss, and that turnbuckle is used to tighten a piece of steel chain that is attached to the grate. And I made some custom parts from construction steel to attach the chains to the grate, because I think that standard hooks could too easily be cut off with a side cutter. And in the future I actually want to have 2 of these sets of parts for each of the grates. At the moment I could only make 1 per grate, because that's the beautiful thing here, I used only parts that I had lying around anyway, and you can buy these parts for I guess 10 to 20 euros for each of the windows. Okay, so now that this is at least a little better than before, let's take care of the basement windows next. So the idea was to use these wooden parts here as temporary door beams that can be inserted behind the windows, making it harder to kick them in from the outside. And I simply used some construction steel angle plates and attached them directly to the masonry. At this moment they are attached to the wall by means of 3 screws that are each about 6 centimeters long. That would be about 2.5 inches inside the wall. Now, of course, the windows will not be indestructible or anything, but it could just buy us the 2 or 3 additional more minutes that you would need to get inside with force. And yeah, the good thing about this is this solution only costs about 5 euros per window. And I attached one of those beams to all of my basement windows. So I guess making it harder for a burglar to break into the house is a good idea. But another one might be to expose the burglar in the night hours by using lights for your advantage. And I will attach a set of 10-watt LED lights and additional motion detectors on many spots around the house. And right now I have 2, and I will put one of them on the balcony here and the other one high up on the wall in the backyard. So I waited for the night, and let's see if they're any good. Now, these 10-watt LED lamps are really great. Believe me, the camera is very weak at low light levels, but if you would stand here, you could basically see every detail down in the garden. So that's a great thing. And by the way, of course, you can adjust the light sensitivity and the switching period of these lamps. But in this case, I wanted them to react both day and night and switch off as quickly as possible, because in this way it is much easier to test the range and functionality of the motion detectors. Okay, so these have been quite improvised, low-tech solutions, but I had to apply them very quickly because I want to react to the current situation, as I explained in the beginning of the video. So this was about getting some things done and fixing some of the most obvious security issues of this house. But I'm also planning to work on a more sophisticated system, and I want to somehow tie these standard passive infrared motion detectors that I already have around the house into some kind of Wi-Fi based home security system. But I can't say at this point if I will have any success with that, if that will be a feasible way to do it and so on. But another thing that I want to work with, and that has already shown some quite promising results, are IP cameras that I want to use to secure the house. And I have bought 3 different models, the third one of which has still to arrive here. I hope that will happen tomorrow. And I'm testing these different models, which are in different price ranges, and I want to make a video about that. I also want to take a look inside at least one of the models that I have bought, so some kind of a teardown video will be in that as well. And if all things go well, then you might see a video about these IP cameras within this weekend. So, but before I call it a day, I want to ask you guys about your opinion of the things that I did today. I know my measures are quite improvised and not really the best that you can do. Well, maybe you have some advice, or maybe you have even experiences with this kind of stuff because you have been the victim of a burglary in the past. How did you deal with it? What was the biggest problem? What did you do about it? Or maybe you are a burglar yourself and want to share some secrets of your trade.